The Bourbon Pecan Pie. As one of America's oldest desserts, its story rests among the annals of United States history as a rich tale of inspiration, human perseverance, and ingenuity in the face of adversity. Now, newly discovered photographs and journal entries have unlocked mysteries and illuminated facts which historians have debated for over a century. Join me as together we re-examine one of America's most tantalizing tales, the Bourbon Pecan Pie Deliverance. The USS Potomac. As one of the Union Navy's most advanced battleships, she survived 13 glorious sea battles and was revered as the luckiest ship to ever be produced by its Massachusetts-based shipyard, Crowner & Crowner Limited. By 1870, the Department of Defense sold it to the Peterson Shipping Company for $30,000. Peterson began using the Potomac as a cargo and civilian transport, making jaunts down the Atlantic seaboard. The Potomac also regularly carried working-class New Yorkers seeking a new start in the now Union southern states. On August 9, 1870, however, disaster struck. In the early morning hours, the Potomac split her starboard side wide open on what was later discovered to be the remains of the CSS Raleigh, a Confederate steam-powered ironclad warship, which 6 years earlier had sunk during battle defending the Confederate coastline. Only 2 of the 300 passengers and crew would survive: Mary Ann Dupree and Rumfeld Dimitri. The shore they washed up upon was that of Hoosier Island, a then deserted island 10 miles off the coast of North Carolina. Picking themselves up off the sandy shore, they eagerly collected and opened the crates which had served as their flotation to safety. Their spirits were crestfallen as they surmised what they had so hastily gathered. Before them sat 13 barrels of creamy New York butter, 6 barrels of Have pecans, 16 barrels of sugar, 4 cases of Pennsylvania dark chocolate, 8 barrels of flour, and 1 case of Old Hare Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. In addition to these items, washing up with the surf every so often were hundreds of Lady Maybelle brand deluxe pie tins from a broken crate that was expected in Raleigh the next day. The situation had turned more disastrous than any had imagined. The journal entry of Rumfeld Dimitri, a once successful entrepreneur and antiquity dealer from Rochester who, in his bankruptcy, was en route to South Carolina to start a new life with his business partner and brother, writes,
"We have landed safely upon this deserted shore, yet what we once surmised to be a comfortable weight for rescue, abounding with dried goods and supplies to survive upon, has served only to crush each one's spirits. Where we planned to feast on cured ham and dried apples, we now have only the option of gorging ourselves on pure butter and sugar, or drowning ourselves in bourbon whiskey. No man can survive upon these articles. Damned to the depths each one of us for clutching so hastily to such useless cargo. Furthermore, God has seen fit to take from me Leopold. I fear he has drowned in the wreckage, and I accept it is for the best. God rest his tortured soul."
Leopold was once Rumfeld's most prized possession of all, a curious wild man of sorts which he had won in a ruthless game of Devapakad during a past visit to Calcutta. Rumfeld's dream was to domesticate the creature man and make him a business partner in his next glorious endeavor, the shaved ice industry. However, after compiling the mute man's responses to images and stimuli, Harvard psychologists concluded that the creature man's greatest dream in life was to eat someone and wear their skin. Dejected, Rumfeld accepted that their career goals were simply taking them in different directions. Before the wreck, Leopold was to be deposited at a local circus somewhere in South Carolina. Time was running out. In the hope of finding signs of civilization, Dimitri volunteered to trek out across the island, leaving Mary Ann to guard the camp. Yet, among the darkening despair, Mary Ann Dupree's spirit shone bright. Only a schoolgirl, her poverty-stricken parents had put her on the doomed ship to spend the autumn living with her aunt in Charlotte, intending to save money until they could afford to travel down the coast and join her there. Mary Ann had always been most skilled at baking, and after carefully inspecting the load which the survivors had drawn to shore with them, an idea began to develop.
I remembered watching Mama make a simple pie crust over fire, then place a thick mixture of pecans, chocolate, flour, butter, and brown sugar in the crust. Finally, she'd add a healthy portion of Papa's bourbon.
The only item which they now lacked to create the pie: eggs. Many failed attempts were made to create the pies without the eggs. None would suffice. Without this key ingredient, they would simply be eating sugary slop with their hands. That night, however, Providence descended upon them.
The next day, I remember spying what seemed to be another survivor, treading his way through the surf. He walked strangely and seemed to have some belonging under his arm.
What Mary Ann spotted was, in fact, Leopold, come from the wreckage, and under his arm, one surviving duck from the cages which were being transported in the belly of the ship. Clearly, the creature man intended to eat the duck himself. Yet Mary Ann was able to snatch the bird from him. Now with the missing ingredient retained, she set out to bake a dozen of the one dish that might just save their lives. What resulted has been the very culinary legend which has enamored our country for years: the Bourbon Pecan Pie. 3 weeks later, Captain Juan Ricardo Rodriguez was commanding the Seawolf, an agile, state-of-the-art naval vessel not far from the Carolina shore that morning. He writes in one of his final seafaring journals, August 30th, 1870. This morning, a most unexpected aroma arrested my senses. Such an enticing scent came to me from off the east wind. Something of sugar, roasting pecans, and even bourbon whiskey. I immediately gave command to my skipper to cut hard to the east, hoping our ship could discover the source of that most wonderful sensation. Soon, we saw the firelight coming from the Carolina coast and were overwhelmed by that rich, heavenly aroma. The three were soon rescued by Captain Rodriguez, and the recipe was quickly the sensation of newspapers and cookbooks from New York to San Francisco. Appropriately, the captain named the newfound confection Hoosier Pie, by the island he discovered it upon. Years later, each survivor would pass from diabetes, a little understood condition at the time, and most certainly caused by the consumption of nothing but the pies for nearly 1 month. What they lost, we have gained in a culinary masterpiece, an American mainstay of the dinner table, the Bourbon Pecan Pie.